I am Virgil Donovan, 34 years old, and the founder of FutureTech Solutions. Last Tuesday, I stared at my phone in disbelief at a text from my brother Marcus. Board meeting concluded. You have been voted out as CEO. Expect a call from our lawyer, I simply replied. Understood. Without hesitation, I called Richard Zhang, CEO of our biggest competitor. 5 hours later, I signed papers selling my 51% stake. By morning, my phone exploded with 25 missed calls. If you have ever been betrayed by family, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe to see what happens when your own flesh and blood tries to take everything you built. Growing up in Seattle, my childhood was defined by the family business. My parents, Harold and Elizabeth Donovan, owned a modest chain of retail stores that provided a comfortable middle-class life for us. From an early age, I knew I was different from my siblings. Marcus, my younger brother by 4 years, was always the smooth talker, the one with the perfect grades and social skills that made everyone gravitate toward him. Angela, 7 years my junior, inherited my mother's charm and my father's determination, making her a natural at winning people over. We were close as kids, building forts in the backyard and defending each other at school, but there was always an undercurrent of competition. Marcus would casually mention his straight as whenever I brought home a B in math. Angela would somehow turn family dinners into showcases for her latest achievements. Still, I loved them fiercely, even as I struggled to find my own place in our family dynamic. While my siblings excelled in traditional academics, I fell in love with technology. At 13, while other kids were playing video games, I was learning how to program them. I built my first computer from salvaged parts found at garage sales, staying up until dawn troubleshooting when it would not boot up. My parents never quite understood this passion, viewing my endless hours at the keyboard with a mixture of confusion and concern. Computers are fine as a hobby, Virgil, my father would say, but the family business is your future. The expectation was clear. I would eventually take over the stores, with Marcus handling the finances and Angela the marketing. It was all mapped out, except I had different plans. During my sophomore year at the University of Washington, I developed an algorithm that could predict consumer behavior with remarkable accuracy. The potential applications were enormous, and I knew I had to pursue this full-time. Breaking the news to my parents that I was dropping out was one of the hardest conversations of my life. You are throwing away your education for some pipe dream, my father shouted, his face flushed with anger. No Donovan has ever quit college. My mother tried a gentler approach. Honey, just finish your degree first, then you can play with your computer ideas. But my mind was made up. I moved into a tiny apartment, converted the attached garage into a makeshift office, and lived on ramen noodles and coffee for the next 18 months. Those were brutal days. I would code for 20 hours straight, crash for 4, then start again. Winter in Seattle meant I worked in fingerless gloves because I could not afford proper heating. I failed more times than I can count, each setback a knife twist of doubt. When I excitedly shared breakthroughs with my family, I was met with polite nods and quick subject changes. At holiday gatherings, while Marcus talked about his internship at a prestigious consulting firm or Angela showcased her marketing projects, my parents would introduce me with, "This is Virgil, he is working on computer things." The turning point came when I needed to patent my algorithm. Patent attorneys do not accept payment in enthusiasm, and my savings had dwindled to double digits. My family declined to invest, not believing in the potential of what I had created. It seems risky, Marcus explained, fresh from his business classes. The market penetration for new software is statistically challenging. It was my best friend Jake who believed in me. We had been inseparable since 3rd grade, and though he was studying medicine, he understood my vision in a way my family never did. "This is the real deal, V," he said after I demonstrated an early prototype. "How much do you need?" Jake loaned me $10,000 from his student loans. I promised to pay him back double when I succeeded, a promise he never let me forget. With the patent secured, I formally established FutureTech Solutions. The company mission was simple: develop data analytics software that would revolutionize how businesses understood their customers. I rented a small office space in a less desirable part of town and hired my first 2 employees. Tony, a brilliant programmer I met in an online forum, and Sarah, a data scientist who had been laid off from a larger tech company. That first year was all about survival. We celebrated when we landed our first client, a local retailer willing to take a chance on our unproven technology. The day we received that first check for $8,000, I took Tony and Sarah out for burgers and beers, all 3 of us knowing it was the beginning of something significant. The first 2 years of FutureTech Solutions pushed me to my absolute limits. There were nights I slept under my desk, too exhausted to make the 20-minute drive home. My diet consisted primarily of whatever could be delivered or microwaved. My social life evaporated entirely. Every cent we earned went back into the business, and more than once we came dangerously close to missing payroll. Tony and Sarah stuck with me through it all, working for below-market salaries on the promise of equity and the belief in what we were building. We expanded our client list slowly, each success building on the last, our reputation growing through word of mouth in the Seattle tech community. The breakthrough that changed everything came in our 25th month of operation. Global Retail, a Fortune 500 company with stores nationwide, had heard about our predictive analytics and wanted a demonstration. This was our shot at the big leagues, a contract that could transform our struggling startup into a legitimate player. I spent 3 weeks preparing for that presentation, rehearsing until I knew every word, every number, every possible question and answer. The morning of the meeting, I threw up twice from nerves. When I walked into that boardroom facing 12 skeptical executives, my hands were shaking so badly I had to keep them in my pockets. Your system claims to predict consumer purchasing patterns with 88% accuracy, their CTO said, leaning forward. That is nearly 20 points higher than our current solution. Frankly, I do not believe it. For the next 2 hours, I walked them through our methodology, our testing protocols, our validation studies. I showed them anonymized data from our existing clients and the resulting sales increases. By the time I finished, the skepticism had transformed into cautious interest. 2 days later, we received an email requesting a pilot program. 3 months after that, Global Retail signed a $2 million contract for full implementation across their platform. FutureTech had arrived. With money finally flowing in, we moved to a proper office in downtown Seattle with views of Puget Sound. Our team grew from 3 to 25 as we added developers, data analysts, customer service representatives, and a small sales team. I finally started paying myself a reasonable salary and moved into an apartment where I did not have to share a bathroom with strangers. It was around this time that my family suddenly developed an interest in my computer hobby. My father called out of the blue after the Seattle Business Journal ran a small profile on FutureTech. "Sounds like you are doing well, son," he said awkwardly. "Your mother and I are proud of you." I appreciated the sentiment, even if it felt 5 years too late. Marcus was the first to actively pursue involvement. He had recently graduated with his MBA and called me for lunch at an expensive restaurant I never would have chosen. "I have been following what you are doing with FutureTech," he said between bites of his $40 steak. "Pretty impressive growth trajectory. Have you considered bringing on a proper financial officer?" The subtext was clear. I hesitated, memories of his dismissive attitude toward my vision still fresh. But business was booming, and we did need financial expertise as we scaled. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked. "Let me come on as CFO. I will handle the money side, you focus on the tech." Perfect division of labor. After a week of consideration, I agreed, bringing Marcus on with a competitive salary and a 15% equity stake vested over 3 years. It was more generous than I would have offered anyone else, but he was family, and I wanted to mend that bridge. Angela joined 6 months later, fresh from completing her marketing degree and a brief stint at an advertising agency. I was more cautious this time, but she made a compelling case for how she could enhance our brand presence. "You have built something amazing, Virgil, but nobody knows about it. You are selling yourselves on results alone when you could be dominating mindshare." I gave her the title of marketing director and 12% equity, again more than market rate but less than what Marcus received, which she did not fail to notice and comment on. With both siblings now part of the executive team, our parents began appearing at company functions and offering unsolicited advice. Harold would corner me at company barbecues with suggestions about employee management drawn from his retail experience. Elizabeth started sending articles about corporate culture and team building. At first, I welcomed the family integration. There was something satisfying about proving my success to the people who had doubted me most. I eventually formalized their involvement with a 10% equity grant, primarily out of respect for them as parents rather than for their business contributions. Jake, who had completed medical school and started his residency, received 7% as repayment for his initial loan and ongoing moral support. The remaining 5% was distributed among early employees like Tony and Sarah, who had believed in future tech when it was nothing but a dream and some code. By our 5th anniversary, Future Tech had grown to a $15 million company with nearly 100 employees. We had expanded our product line beyond retail analytics into financial services, healthcare, and logistics. Each new sector brought new challenges and opportunities for growth. But with growth came the first real signs of trouble. Marcus pushed constantly for faster expansion, arguing that we needed to capture market share aggressively. "We need to spend money to make money," he would insist during executive meetings. "Your conservative approach is leaving opportunity on the table." I preferred a more measured strategy, remembering all too well those early days of financial precariousness. Angela began implementing marketing changes without full consultation, altering our carefully crafted brand identity to something flashier but less substantive. "Trust me, this is what the market responds to," she said when I questioned a particularly garish rebrand proposal. My father started inserting himself into hiring decisions, suggesting relatives and old friends for positions they were not qualified for. "Family takes care of family," he said when I pushed back. "That is how business works in the real world." These were small cracks, but they were widening, and I sensed troubled waters ahead. By year 6, Future Tech had become a recognized name in the data analytics industry. Magazines featured us in their companies to watch lists, and competitors started attempting to reverse engineer our algorithms. Our valuation had soared to $80 million, and we were fielding acquisition offers monthly, all of which I politely declined. This was not just a company to me. It was my life's work. As our profile rose, I found myself increasingly pulled into the public side of the business, speaking at conferences, meeting with potential clients, representing Future Tech to the industry. While I enjoyed aspects of this role, my true passion remained product development. I still coded regularly, working closely with our development team on the next generation of our software. With my attention divided, Marcus gradually assumed more control over day-to-day operations. At first, this seemed like a natural division of labor. He handled administration while I focused on innovation. But subtle changes began occurring. Meetings would be scheduled when I was out of town. Decisions would be made and presented to me as fait accompli. We needed to move quickly, Marcus would explain when I questioned these actions. The opportunity would have been lost if we waited for your input. One particular incident stands out as a turning point. I returned from a technology summit in San Francisco to discover Marcus had met with a major investment group without informing me. When I found out through a chance conversation with our receptionist, I immediately went to his office. "You met with Westridge Capital yesterday?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Marcus barely looked up from his computer. "Yes. They expressed interest in a minority investment. And you did not think the founder and majority owner should be involved in that conversation?" He finally glanced at me, sighing as if dealing with a difficult child. You were presenting at the summit. This was preliminary anyway. I know how much you hate the financial discussions. I later discovered that Marcus had altered several contract terms during these preliminary discussions, including governance provisions that would have diluted my decision-making authority. When confronted, he dismissed my concerns. It is all standard language, Virgil. You are too sensitive about control. Everything I do is for the benefit of the company. My company, I reminded him firmly. Our company now, he corrected. We all have equities. We all have a stake in its success. Angela aligned herself with Marcus during these confrontations. Virgil, you are brilliant with technology, but you do not understand modern marketing or finance. Let us handle those aspects while you do what you do best. Their united front made me feel increasingly isolated. Even my parents seemed to side with them during family disputes. They have MBAs, son, my father pointed out during a tense Sunday dinner. Maybe you should listen to their expertise. What they conveniently overlooked was that without my computer hobby, none of them would have had anything to manage or market in the first place. I began noticing other concerning patterns. Family members would fall silent when I entered rooms. Marcus held regular lunches with Angela and occasionally our parents, to which I was never invited. When asked, they claimed they were just catching up, though their sudden silence upon my approach suggested otherwise. It was Sarah, my loyal data scientist from the beginning, who first alerted me to the larger danger. She caught me alone late one evening as I was leaving the office. Virgil, I thought you should know, she said, glancing around nervously. Marcus has been having private meetings with the department heads. He is telling everyone there is going to be a strategic restructuring soon. This was the first I had heard of any restructuring. When I pressed for details, Sarah revealed Marcus had been suggesting that the company needed more professional leadership and that my technical focus was limiting our growth potential. I spent that night reviewing recent financial reports and discovered Marcus had been making questionable allocations. Expense categories had been shifted, certain investments had been accelerated without proper validation, and projections had been manipulated to paint a picture of underperformance in areas under my direct control. More disturbing was his expansion proposal, which would have committed FutureTech to a 5-year lease on lavish new headquarters and a hiring spree that would have doubled our burn rate. The plan was fiscally reckless, risking the stable foundation we had built for the sake of appearances. I reached out to Jake, who remained both a shareholder and one of my few truly trusted confidants, despite his busy medical career. We met for drinks at a quiet bar away from the office. Marcus approached me last month, Jake revealed after I explained my concerns. He wanted to know if I would be willing to sell my shares. Sell to whom, I asked, though I already suspected the answer. To him and Angela. They are pooling resources. Said something about consolidating family control of the company. The implications were clear. My siblings were attempting to gather enough voting power to force me out of my own company. With their shares combined with our parents' and potentially Jake's, they would still fall short of my 51%, but not by much. If they could convince a few other shareholders or find a technicality in our corporate bylaws, they might succeed. The office atmosphere grew increasingly strained. Employees began choosing sides, sensing the power struggle at the top. Some remained loyal to me as the founder and technical visionary. Others aligned with Marcus, attracted by his promises of aggressive growth and the potential rewards that might follow. My father approached me with what he called a compromise solution. He proposed restructuring the board of directors to include 3 independent members, which would have effectively diluted my control despite my majority ownership. This is standard corporate governance, he argued. No single person should have that much power, not even the founder. I refused, reminding him that I had built this company from nothing while the family had contributed nothing but doubt until success was already assured. The tension finally boiled over one evening when I stayed late at the office. Passing by the conference room, I overheard Marcus and Angela in heated discussion. "He is never going to agree," Angela was saying. "You know how stubborn he is about control." "Then we move to Plan B," Marcus replied. "The shareholders' agreement has provisions we can use. I have been talking with counsel about options." I walked away quietly, my suspicions confirmed. That night I could not sleep, wrestling with the painful reality that my own family was conspiring against me. By morning, I had resolved to confront them directly, hoping against hope that there was some explanation beyond betrayal. I never got the chance. The next morning started like any other. I stopped for my usual coffee, planning exactly how I would approach the situation with my siblings. As I reached the FutureTech building and pressed my access card to the security panel, the light flashed red instead of the usual green. I tried again with the same result. "Sorry, Mr. Donovan," said Keith, the security guard who had greeted me by name every morning for 3 years. "I cannot let you in without an appointment." "Keith, this is my company," I said, certain there must be some misunderstanding. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I have orders from Mr. Marcus Donovan. Your access has been temporarily suspended pending a security review." I stood there, briefcase in hand, as employees filtered past me into the building, their curious glances and whispered comments adding humiliation to shock. Several nodded sympathetically, while others averted their eyes entirely. I called Marcus immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried Angela with the same result. I even called the main reception desk, only to be told that both were unavailable and in an important meeting. 10 minutes later, as I sat in my car trying to process what was happening, my phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. "Board meeting concluded. You have been voted out as CEO. Expect a call from our lawyer." I stared at those words, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. How could they have held a board meeting without notifying me? How could they vote me out when I held majority shares? None of it made legal sense, but the message was unmistakable. A coup had been attempted. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through options. The text from Marcus was both infuriating and puzzling. They could not legally remove me as CEO without my consent, given my ownership stake. Which meant either they were bluffing, hoping I would resign voluntarily, or they had found some corporate loophole I was unaware of. Once home, I spread out all our legal documents across my dining table. Articles of incorporation, shareholder agreements, bylaws, everything that governed the company I had built. I pored over them, looking for whatever technicality they thought they had found. My phone rang. It was Jake. "V, what the hell is happening?" "Marcus just called me to a special shareholders meeting next week. Something about urgent corporate restructuring due to leadership concerns." I filled him in on the morning's events, my voice tightly controlled despite the emotional storm inside. "They cannot do this," Jake said firmly. "You own 51%. They are trying something. Marcus has been meeting with lawyers for weeks. I knew he was ambitious, but this is next-level betrayal." My phone buzzed with another message, this one from Sarah. "They're telling everyone you're taking a sabbatical. Marcus is presenting documents claiming you've been mismanaging company assets. They're planning a formal shareholder vote to remove you next week." "It's all lies, Virgil. What can I do to help?" The pieces fell into place. They were building a case for cause removal, a provision that existed in most corporate bylaws for extreme circumstances like fraud or gross negligence. While difficult to prove, the mere allegation could tie the company up in legal battles for months or years, destroying everything we had built. I considered my options. I could fight hire attorneys, counter their claims, wage a legal and PR battle against my own family. The thought exhausted and depressed me. Even if I won, what kind of company would remain after such a civil war? What relationships could ever be salvaged? As evening fell, I found myself staring at the family photo on my living room wall. It was taken at Angela's college graduation just 3 years earlier. All of us smiling, arms around each other, proud and united. How had we gone from that to this in such a short time? Then a different option occurred to me, so radical I almost dismissed it immediately. But the more I considered it, the more it made strategic sense. If they wanted the company so badly they would betray their own blood, perhaps I should let them have it, but on my terms, not theirs. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a contact I had not called in over a year. Richard Zhang, CEO of Technova, our largest competitor. Richard had approached me multiple times about potential acquisitions or mergers, offers I had always politely declined. His most recent offer, 6 months ago, had valued FutureTech at $70 million, a number I considered too low at the time. He answered on the third ring. "Virgil Donovan," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" "I would like to discuss that acquisition offer," I said without preamble. "Are you still interested?" A pause. "Potentially. Has something changed in your position?" "Let's just say I am more open to possibilities now." "Can we meet tonight?" 3 hours later, I sat across from Richard in a small coffee shop on the outskirts of Seattle, far from any tech industry haunts where we might be recognized. He arrived alone as requested, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater rather than his usual corporate attire. Richard had always been a straightforward competitor, someone I respected despite our market rivalry. He built Technova from the ground up much as I had FutureTech, though his focus was more on hardware solutions while we specialized in software. "I will be direct," I said after we had exchanged pleasantries. "I am willing to sell my controlling interest in FutureTech. 51%. But I have conditions." If Richard was surprised by my abrupt offer, he hid it well. "I am listening. First, I want $65 million. Cash, not stock." This was higher than his previous valuation of the entire company, but still a fair price given our growth since his last offer. "For majority control, that is reasonable," he nodded. "What else?" "The deal happens now. Tonight. Complete confidentiality for 24 hours. He raised an eyebrow. "That is unusually urgent." "May I ask why?" I gave him a heavily edited version of the situation, explaining only that there was an internal leadership dispute I preferred to resolve decisively rather than protract. "And your final condition?" he asked, sensing there was more. "I stay on as Chief Technology Officer. 1-year guaranteed contract, market rate compensation, full autonomy over the technical division. After that, we renegotiate based on performance." Richard considered this for a long moment. "The financial terms are acceptable. The timeline is challenging but doable. Your continued involvement is actually a plus. Your technical vision is a significant part of what makes FutureTech valuable." He made a phone call, speaking rapidly in Mandarin to someone I presumed was his legal counsel. After a brief conversation, he turned back to me. "I can have paperwork ready in 3 hours. My attorney is drafting it now. Can you meet at his office?" By 2 a.m., I had signed the documents transferring 51% ownership of my creation to Technova Holdings. In return, $65 million would be wired to my account by noon the next day. I retained 20% ownership of the company, with the remaining 29% distributed among my family members and other shareholders. As I drove home in the early morning darkness, I felt an indescribable mixture of emotions. Grief for what I had lost, satisfaction at having outmaneuvered those who sought to betray me, and uncertainty about what the future would hold. I slept fitfully for a few hours before my phone rang at 8 a.m. It was Michael Brown, the family's longtime attorney. The chess game had begun. Good morning, Virgil, Michael Brown began in his practiced, professional tone. I am calling regarding some significant corporate governance matters at FutureTech. Good morning, Michael, I replied, my voice calm despite having slept only 3 hours. What can I help you with? I have been retained by the board to facilitate a leadership transition. There are some documents requiring your signature. Nothing complicated, standard resignation and transition agreements. I had known Michael since childhood. He had handled my parents' business affairs for decades and had drawn up the initial incorporation documents for FutureTech as a professional courtesy. His allegiance to my parents was unquestioned, which made his current role unsurprising but nonetheless disappointing. Before we proceed with any paperwork, Michael, I would strongly suggest you advise your clients to check the corporate registry this morning. A pause. I am not sure I follow. Just a suggestion. They might find some recent changes of interest. I could almost hear his mental gears turning. Virgil, what have you done? Nothing that was not completely within my rights as majority shareholder. Have a good day, Michael. I ended the call and turned my phone to silent mode. According to my agreement with Richard, the formal announcement of the acquisition would happen at 10 a.m. I wanted to be well away from any immediate fallout. At precisely 10, Richard Zhang walked into the FutureTech offices with his executive team and legal counsel. According to Sarah, who texted me details throughout the morning, the scene was something out of a corporate drama. The FutureTech executive team, Marcus, Angela, and several department heads, were gathered in the main conference room for what they thought was a strategy session on the post-Virgil era. Richard entered unannounced, introduced himself politely, and placed a stack of documents on the conference table. Good morning, he said. For those who do not know me, I am Richard Zhang, CEO of Technova. As of midnight last night, Technova has acquired controlling interest in FutureTech Solutions. I am here to discuss the transition and our vision for the combined company. The room fell into stunned silence. Marcus reportedly turned so pale that one of the executives asked if he needed medical attention. Angela gripped the edge of the table as if to steady herself. This is impossible, Marcus finally managed. My brother. Your brother Virgil sold his 51% stake to us, Richard confirmed. Everything has been properly filed and registered. The transaction is complete and legally binding. He cannot do that without board approval, Marcus protested. Richard's attorney gently slid a document across the table. Actually, under your corporate bylaws, majority shareholders may dispose of their personal equity without board consent. This is quite standard. Mr. Donovan was fully within his rights. As this information was being processed, my parents arrived, having been summoned by an urgent text from Angela. Harold demanded explanations, his voice rising as the situation became clear. Where is Virgil? He asked repeatedly. Get him on the phone right now. By this point, my phone had begun its meltdown. In the space of 1 hour, I received 25 calls and 37 text messages. 8 calls from Marcus, 5 from Angela, 4 each from my parents, and the rest from various executives, employees, and Michael Brown. The text messages told their own story of escalating panic. Marcus 10:15 a.m. What the hell have you done? Marcus 10:17 a.m. Call me immediately. Marcus 10:25 a.m. You have destroyed everything. How could you sell to Zhang of all people? Angela 10:22 a.m. I cannot believe you would do this to your own family. Angela 10:31 a.m. Mom is crying. Dad is furious. Is this what you wanted? Angela 10:45 a.m. Please, Virgil. We need to talk. We made mistakes. We know that now. My father's messages were brief, but evolved from anger to desperation. Call me. Now followed by son, please. We need to fix this. I watched the notifications accumulate without responding. Let them sit with the consequences of their actions, just as I had been forced to sit outside my own building yesterday morning. Sarah kept me updated on the unfolding drama. Richard is actually being very professional. He's talking about combining strengths and respecting the future tech culture. Marcus tried to argue but got shut down hard when Richard showed him the signed contracts. Your sister started crying. By early afternoon, news of the acquisition had hit the tech press. TechCrunch ran the headline. Technova acquires FutureTech in surprise move, creates data analytics powerhouse. The article speculated about the unexpected timing but praised the strategic fit between the companies. Richard held a formal press conference at 2 p.m., announcing the merger with appropriate corporate enthusiasm. He spoke of shared values and complementary technologies, making no mention of the family drama behind the scenes. He did, however, specifically mention that I would be staying on as Chief Technology Officer, ensuring continuity of FutureTech's innovative vision. I finally answered a call at 4 p.m. Not from family, but from Jake. You magnificent bastard, he said, laughter in his voice. I just got an email from Technova offering to buy my shares at a premium. Absolutely brilliant move. Thanks for not selling to them, I said quietly. It would have made things much harder. Are you kidding? I would never stab you in the back. Unlike some people we know, he paused. How are you doing, really? Processing, I admitted. It is still sinking in. Let me buy you a drink. You just made a historic power move. It should be celebrated properly. We met at our old college bar, a dive that had somehow survived Seattle's gentrification. Over whiskeys, Jake filled me in on details I had missed. Marcus was planning to sell to Datacore, he revealed. I found out yesterday. They were offering less than what Zhang paid you, but Marcus would have been installed as CEO with a 5-year contract. So he was not just pushing me out, he was selling to our biggest rival. Exactly. And Angela was fully on board. They figured once they had enough shareholder support, they could force your hand. The betrayal cut even deeper, knowing how thoroughly they had planned my removal. What happens now? Jake asked. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Richard Zhang. I should take this, I said, stepping outside. Virgil, Richard said when I answered. I hope I am not interrupting anything important. Not at all. How is the transition going? About as expected. Some resistance, some acceptance. The usual merger dynamics, he paused. We are having an all-hands meeting tomorrow morning. I would appreciate your presence. Do you think that is wise? My family is part of the company, as are you. We need to establish the new normal quickly. 9 a.m. main conference room. As I returned to Jake, I wondered how I would face my family after everything that had happened. Yet I also felt a strange sense of anticipation. For the first time since this ordeal began, I was no longer reacting to their machinations. The next move was mine. The FutureTech building looked different as I approached it the next morning, though nothing had physically changed. The security guard nodded respectfully as I badged in with my newly reactivated access card. Employees watched me cross the lobby, their expressions ranging from sympathy to curiosity to barely concealed excitement at the corporate drama. The main conference room was already full when I arrived, deliberately timing my entrance for exactly 9 a.m., neither early nor late. Richard sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 Technova executives. To his right sat my family. Marcus, Angela, and my parents, all looking like they had barely slept. The tension was palpable as I took the only remaining seat, directly opposite Richard at the other end of the table. Department heads and senior managers filled the remaining chairs, with Sarah giving me a subtle thumbs up from her position near the middle. Thank you all for coming, Richard began, his tone professionally neutral. As you know, Technova has acquired controlling interest in Future Tech Solutions. Today, we will discuss the integration plan and address any immediate concerns. He outlined the basic structure of the combined company, emphasizing that both brands would continue to exist while gradually merging operations. He introduced his executives and explained their roles in the transition. Throughout this presentation, my family sat stone-faced, Marcus occasionally clenching his jaw when particular points were mentioned. Now, to address the elephant in the room, Richard continued, there have been some leadership changes. I will serve as CEO of the combined entity. Virgil Donovan will continue as Chief Technology Officer, overseeing all product development for both FutureTech and Technova's data divisions. At this, Marcus could no longer contain himself. "This is absurd," he interrupted. "You cannot just walk in and—" "Mr. Donovan," Richard cut him off firmly, "I understand this is a difficult transition. However, as majority shareholder, Technova has full authority to make these decisions." "My brother stabbed his own family in the back," Marcus persisted, turning to glare at me. "He sold out to a competitor without a word to any of us." The room fell silent, all eyes bouncing between us like spectators at a tennis match. "I believe Virgil has remained silent long enough," Richard said, surprising everyone. "Perhaps we should hear his perspective." All attention shifted to me. I had rehearsed this moment mentally, preparing careful, measured responses. But facing my family's angry and hurt expressions, something more authentic emerged. "I founded FutureTech in a garage when nobody believed in me," I began, my voice quiet but firm. "I lived on ramen noodles and caffeine for 2 years while building this company from nothing. When I finally achieved success, suddenly everyone wanted a piece." I looked directly at Marcus. "You were voted onto the board because you were my brother, not because of your qualifications. You were given equity because you were family. And yesterday morning, you had me barred from entering my own building." Marcus started to speak, but I continued. "You held a board meeting without notifying the majority shareholder. You claim to have voted me out as CEO, which is legally impossible. And you told me to expect a call from a lawyer." I turned to Angela. "You stood by him. You helped craft the narrative that I was mismanaging the company I built." "We were trying to save the company from your lack of business acumen," she responded, her voice cracking. "No, you were trying to take what was not yours. And yes, I knew about your plan to sell to Datacore at a discount in exchange for executive positions." My parents looked shocked at this revelation, turning to Marcus with questioning expressions. "That is not true," Marcus insisted, though his reddening face suggested otherwise. "Sarah forwarded me the emails," I replied calmly. "You thought everyone would follow your lead against me." "You were wronged." Harold finally spoke up. "We may have overstepped," he admitted reluctantly. "But selling to Zhang, without even discussing it with us, that was extreme, Virgil. When someone tries to steal from you, you do not stop to negotiate with them," I replied. "You act decisively." The conversation might have devolved further, but Richard intervened. "What is done," he stated firmly. "The question now is how we move forward. FutureTech has brilliant technology. Technova has manufacturing and distribution capabilities you lack. Together, we can build something greater than either company could achieve alone. But not if we are divided by personal grievances." He turned to my family. "Marcus and Angela, you both have valuable skills. Technova is prepared to retain you in leadership roles, with some adjustments to responsibilities. But I need to know that you can work constructively in the new organization." Marcus looked stunned. "You are not firing us." "Business is not about revenge," Richard replied. "It is about maximizing value. You built solid departments here. That has value if you can adapt to the new reality." The meeting continued for another hour, discussing reporting structures, integration timelines, and immediate priorities. Throughout, the tension remained, but professionalism gradually reasserted itself as people focused on practical matters rather than emotional ones. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Richard suggested that my family and I use the room for a private conversation. My first instinct was to refuse. What more was there to say? But something in my mother's pleading expression made me agree. When the door closed behind the last departing executive, silence fell heavily over the five of us. I waited, having said my piece already. "I never thought it would come to this," Marcus finally said, staring at the table. "It started small, just trying to have more input into strategic decisions. Then it snowballed. You locked me out of my own building," I repeated, the hurt still raw. "We panicked," Angelo admitted. "We thought if we moved decisively, you would back down. Accept a lesser role. We never imagined you would sell to Zhang. What did you expect me to do? Roll over while you stole my company?" My father leaned forward. "We never saw it as stealing, Virgil. We saw it as professionalizing the management. You are brilliant with technology, but what? Not suited to lead. The company grew from nothing to $80 million under my leadership. What exactly was unprofessional about that?" My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but gesturing toward it. "We made a terrible mistake. We know that now." Marcus finally looked up, his expression a complex mixture of anger, shame, and resignation. "I was so sure I could run this company better than you. So convinced that your technical focus was limiting our potential. I let ambition cloud my judgment. You let it destroy our relationship," I corrected. "This was never just business." "Can we fix this?" Angela asked quietly. "Is there any way back from here?" I considered the question seriously. "Not to what was before. That is gone. But forward. Maybe. It depends on what you all do now." "What does that mean?" my father asked. "It means actions, not words. It means accepting the new reality and working within it, not undermining it. It means earning back trust one day at a time, knowing it might never fully return." The conversation continued, painful but necessary. Grievances were aired, mistakes acknowledged. My parents admitted they had enabled the situation, caught between their children and unsure how to mediate. Marcus revealed his deep-seated competitive drive had morphed into jealousy of my success. Angela confessed to feeling overshadowed and seeking validation through alliance with Marcus. None of it excused what they had done, but understanding the why of it helped begin the long process of healing. As we finally prepared to leave, Marcus asked the question that had clearly been bothering him most. "How did you decide so quickly?" "To sell to Zhang, I mean. We had been planning for weeks, and you outmaneuvered us in hours." I considered him for a moment. "Because I always had a contingency plan. From the day you joined the company, I kept updated valuations and maintained relationships with potential acquirers. Not because I wanted to sell, but because I understood something you never did." "What is that?" he asked. "That business is business, but family should be family. I always kept the two separate in my mind. You confused them, thinking that family ties gave you business rights you had not earned." His face showed the impact of those words as we all filed out, returning to a workplace forever changed by the events of the past 48 hours. 18 months have passed since that tumultuous week that changed everything. I am sitting in my office at the FutureTech Technova campus, a gleaming new facility that houses both divisions of what has become one of the leading data analytics companies in the country. Outside my window, Seattle's familiar rain patters against the glass, a soothing background to my thoughts. The transition period was not easy. For the first 3 months, every interaction with my family was strained, every meeting fraught with unspoken tension. Richard proved to be an unexpectedly skilled mediator, focusing everyone on business objectives while giving the personal relationships space to evolve naturally. The combined company has thrived beyond expectations. Our revenue has increased 70%, stock value has doubled, and our technology integration has created solutions neither company could have developed independently. The market analysts who initially questioned the hasty merger have since written glowing assessments of our complementary synergies and strategic vision. My working relationship with Marcus has settled into something professionally effective, if personally distant. He now heads international expansion, a role that keeps him traveling and minimizes our direct interaction. When we do meet in executive sessions, he is prepared, respectful, and focused entirely on business matters. The ambitious, competitive younger brother is still visible beneath the surface, but tempered now by humility and caution. Angela has undergone the most dramatic transformation. After initially considering resignation, she instead threw herself into rebuilding the marketing department under the new corporate structure. She approached me 3 months in with a comprehensive rebranding proposal, professional and thorough, in a way her previous work had never been. "I have something to prove now," she acknowledged when I commented on the quality. "To myself as much as anyone else. My parents have stepped back entirely from company involvement, focusing instead on their retirement and, more importantly, on healing our family relationships." Sunday dinners resumed after 6 uncomfortable months, initially filled with stilted conversation and careful politeness. Gradually, genuine moments began to appear between the awkwardness, a shared laugh over an old family story, a moment of connection over a current event. The healing process has been exactly that, a process. The betrayal cut deep, leaving scars that still occasionally throb when triggered by certain words or situations. There were nights I lay awake replaying those events, wondering if I could have prevented the rupture somehow, questioning whether my own actions contributed to the breakdown. Therapy helped, both individual sessions for my own processing and eventually family sessions, where we could address the deeper patterns that led to our corporate civil war. My father's constant comparing of his children, my mother's conflict avoidance, Marcus's insecurity beneath his confidence, Angela's need for validation, my own tendency toward emotional withdrawal when threatened, all these family dynamics had played out in the business arena with predictably explosive results. Through this difficult journey, I have learned lessons that no business school could teach. First, that success changes relationships in ways that are often imperceptible until crisis reveals them. The brother who shared your childhood bedroom becomes the colleague eyeing your position. The parents who questioned your dreams become invested in your company's direction. Second, that ownership and leadership are not merely legal concepts, but responsibilities requiring constant attention and protection. I had naively believed that family bonds would transcend business ambitions, a costly misconception. Third, and perhaps most importantly, that while business conflicts can be resolved through decisive action, human relationships require something much more challenging. Sustained effort, genuine forgiveness, and the courage to remain vulnerable even after being hurt. The company continues to evolve, as do our family dynamics. Last month, Marcus approached me for advice on a personal venture he is considering, the first time he has sought my input since before the conflict. It was a small gesture, but significant in its acknowledgement of my experience and judgment. My parents have found a new rhythm in retirement, focusing on community involvement rather than business affairs. My father recently confessed that he had always pushed us toward competition because he thought it would prepare us for success, never realizing it was undermining the trust that success requires. Richard Zhang has proven to be not just a shrewd businessman, but a principled leader. He has honored every aspect of our original agreement, consulting me on all technology decisions and treating me as a true partner rather than a subordinate. The technology vision was always the prize, he told me recently. Only a fool would interfere with that. Jake remains my closest friend, now a successful surgeon who still enjoys reminding me that his initial $10,000 investment was the best medical decision he ever made. He recently joined our advisory board, bringing his unique perspective to our healthcare analytics division. As for me, I have found an unexpected peace in my role as CTO. Freed from the administrative burdens of running the entire company, I have rediscovered my passion for innovation. My team is currently developing a new collaborative platform specifically designed for family businesses, incorporating governance structures and communication tools that might have prevented our own painful journey. Looking back, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had confronted the issues earlier, before they festered into betrayal. Or if I had been more transparent about my concerns as I noticed the warning signs. There is never just one moment or one person responsible when relationships fracture so dramatically. What I know with certainty is this: true success is measured not by valuations or acquisitions, but by the integrity with which we navigate life's challenges. Sometimes the hardest calls are the ones that never arrive, the conversations we avoid until crisis forces them upon us. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect something you built? Or found yourself betrayed by those you trusted most? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in these painful journeys is the most powerful healing of all. And if you found value in my story, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, in both business and family, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Thank you for listening, and may your own path, however challenging, lead to wisdom rather than bitterness.